Today we're taking a look at the Slava. It's been a while, honestly. I haven't made a video on this ship in several months. Last one was in August last year sometime. And we'll talk a little bit about why I don't play this ship particularly often. But what it is a research bureau ship, a battleship that is in contention with the Ohio. So which one do you get first? Well, Ohio, of course, is the brawler, mid-range kind of focused battleship with pretty accurate guns. 457s, though. Slava is very much a sniper battleship. You only get 406s, but their promise is that they're very accurate. And this game, we're going to see some of that. But only having 406s at tier 10 can be a bit of a downside. The other thing is the armor is just not as good as you might think. It looks a lot like a Kremlin on the outside. The ship model is very similar, but it doesn't have the HP and it certainly doesn't have the armor values. Again, leading to that sniper kind of idea. You'll notice at the start here, it took me quite a while to even shoot at anything. That really comes down to picking your shots. With the Slava, you have to be getting broadsides. If you're having to shoot at bow-on battleships or even cruisers, a lot of cruisers have 30 millimeters of armor at these high tiers. They're just going to auto-bounce your shells if they're angled. So you have to be finding those broadside shots. And then the promise of Slava's better dispersion should help you do very good damage. The alpha damage, though, is a bit of a downside as well. 12,100 alpha compared to, let's say, a Montana, which has 13,500, which also is 406 millimeter shells. And that one gets 12 guns rather than the 9 we get here. So there is some serious downsides to the Slava. That's one of the reasons I don't play it quite as much. One of them being the armor I find to be a little bit lackluster. I'm someone, of course, who likes to push in, and Slava doesn't really promote that playstyle particularly well. And the other thing is just the disappointment, let's say, of getting 5 overpens on a broadside battleship like that. Enough salvos like that, and the promise of really good damage into broadsides starts to feel a little underwhelming. That's really why I haven't played it all that often. However, no battleship is ever going to be perfectly accurate, including the Slava. The game would not function otherwise. Overmatch and just the alpha damage would be far too strong. But Slava has some really good dispersion, as you can see there. At longer ranges, the shell velocity also helps us to hit things at longer range very easily. That cruiser does a good job of turning in to throw off my shot. But we will find some broadsides yet. You'll notice here, I'm looking for those opportunities to find some broadsides. I spawned on this flank, looking to go a little passive. You'll notice I was starting to kite out at the beginning. But since we have so much information that their team is just not really on the 8, 9, 10 lines, I really want to push up just enough to get some good angles in here onto these enemy ships that are really trying to play the islands here. It's a really common spot to be. There's the cruiser going broadside again. Okay dispersion, but that shell velocity really feels nice in catching broadside ships. And there you go. There you go. That's why you get the Slava. So if you're someone who's not as interested in brawling and you really are interested in a battleship, I think the Slava is probably the research bureau ship to go for. There are, of course, other cruisers and destroyers to get, certainly. But if you're looking for that battleship, Slava can be very good. I haven't really talked about the AA yet. I typically don't mention AA in these games because realistically, you're not going to be doing that much to a carrier. But the Slava is a little different. It has much longer range AA than most, 6.6 kilometers rather than 6 kilometers. And the AA is actually very strong. Unlike Kremlin, the AA mounts have good survivability, so you aren't going to lose all of your AA the instant someone looks at you with high explosive, which is pretty nice. And that allows us to play some flanking positions as well. Oftentimes in carrier games, you're not going to play away from your teammates, and that can be tough with a ship that really needs broadsides, because most people these days aren't just going to show broadside to a clump of 5 or 10 enemy ships, right? That is just not going to happen. So you have to kind of play on your own away from the majority of your teammates, which can open you up to the carrier's focus. And having some decent AA certainly can help with that. I will say, after playing this game, I think I need to play the Slava a little bit more. I certainly haven't given it a fair shake, especially considering a little disappointed in the Ohio sometimes, where it doesn't do very well, especially when you're at longer ranges. The shell velocity is actually really bad on the Ohio. Something you have to worry about with that ship is just people maneuvering too quickly when they do go broadside, and they'll see your shells coming, and it's not actually too bad to dodge. You can see into even the Louisiana, we get some really, really nice damage. Louisiana, of course, very hard citadel to hit, one of the more modern battleships that have maybe been overtuned a little bit. Those hybrids are a little difficult to deal with. We do manage to get the DD. That's another nice thing about the better accuracy and the shell velocity. You can really impact destroyer fights as well. You'll see just slowly pushing up here, not trying to get too close to the enemy team. Our concealment is good enough that we're often going undetected between shots, and at these longer ranges, you're pretty good. But I find that 15 to 20 kilometer range is really where Slava shines at its best. Its shell velocity is more than enough to easily hit targets at these ranges, and then the velocity and the pen, really. The velocity helps the pen, but the shell pen is kind of ridiculous. We're, again, overpenning broadside battleships. Which can be a little bit of a downside as things get closer ranges. Of course, if you're going to overpen some citadels these days, yeah, that can be a little bit annoying. A lot of those plane kills, by the way, were of the spotter plane, or the fighter plane, sorry, that the carrier dropped. Typically, that's what you're going to see shot down when you are getting a lot of plane kills. The carrier really has to run through a lot of flak with its attack planes to really take some big damage. But again, just looking for broadsides is the key with Slava. So if you're someone who has difficulty knowing where to position your battleship, this might not be the ship for you. That's the other thing. Even though it is nice and easy to use, the good shell velocity and nice accuracy at range, you don't know where to position to get these broadsides and take advantage of that without getting focused and deleted potentially. I think Slava could actually be a hard ship to play. Considering that's the only way you're going to get good value out of this ship. The broadside damage is excellent, as we can see here. Not every game is going to look this good, let's be honest. We're already up to 9 Citadel hits. You can't really expect that, myself included, in every match in a Slava. This is definitely a bit of an exception. But I wanted to show it because, again, I haven't looked at Slava, and I'm typically kind of negative on this ship, thanks to its somewhat limited capability against anything that isn't broadside. But we haven't looked at it for long, so I really wanted to get this one out to you guys. And already up to 177,000 damage, 8 minutes, 9 minutes into this match, feels pretty good. So it's looked pretty awesome, hasn't it, the Slava? Really, really nice. Well, now we're about to see maybe why you shouldn't be considering the Slava. A Schlieffen, of course, is going to outbrawl us massively, right? No question. However, if you're not going to be getting citadels into broadside targets, the damage output can feel pretty weak, considering you only have 9 shells and that lower alpha damage. So even full pens, overpens, they're not doing as much damage as another battleship would at tier 10. 12,100 is not very good when it comes to the alpha damage. So what I'm saying really is it relies on getting citadels to pump up its damage numbers. Here, as we're getting closer to these ships, you would expect to be doing pretty good damage, honestly, especially if they do happen to go broadside. The Schlieffen does duck behind the corner, torpedo us even, so we do have to dodge those, but he's grounded, and he's going to reverse out, potentially broadside to us. And, I mean, it's a Slava. You shouldn't be reversing out broadside on to a Slava of all battleships, right? That's where this ship is going to shine. Got to turn in for the torps. I will mention the maneuverability when it comes to the acceleration is actually pretty good here. It's a really nice feature of the Slava. But now we get to see, well, a broadside Schlieffen. 7,000 damage. And now we're just going to get chunked down by secondaries. He'll do 7,000 damage in like 5 seconds to us with those. Brawling is not the Slava's strong suit. However, you would be expecting to do at least a citadel's worth of damage to a broadside Schlieffen. Hopefully more, honestly. Fortunately, we do get another salvo into him. Redemption time, potentially. You're seeing the lack of armor here as well. And again, nothing. Very, very little damage here, unfortunately. Our bow and stern are actually only 25 millimeters on this ship. So overmatching it at closer ranges is pretty easy for a lot of other battleships at the tier. It's where some of that damage is coming from. There we go. Finally, we do get that one citadel. but we are just melting under these secondaries and his main guns. But he's low, so we should be able to finish him off, right? Not quite, unfortunately. Good thing I have teammates around, right? I was considering kiting away before pushing into this cap zone, although I knew I had to go in and reset it. So typically you don't want to be taking that engagement, though. All things considered, you probably should be kiting away from a Slava or a Shikishima in a Slava and hoping your teammates are going to do some spotting. Again, no citadels there somehow. I don't know. The damage is all right, but you certainly do need those citadels. And we got 10 this game, so we had really, really good damage. And overall, it was a great game. I'm not disputing that at all, but something to consider with the Slava is if you're not getting those citadels on broadsides, it's pretty pathetic as a tier 10 battleship. As for the build here on the Slava, I'm going a little bit different. I am actually running some AA upgrades here. It really comes down to needing to play away from my teammates to get those cross shots to find those broadsides. And with this level of AA, I do think it's just good enough to not worry about some of those tier 10 carriers in those situations. The other thing is we're playing typically pretty far back, so then you're not as likely to be the carrier's focus as well. Against super carriers, though, yeah, this isn't going to be enough. But we still have fire prevention, concealment, as well as emergency repair expert. Notice here, even with this upgrade, we only get 4 heals. Bit of a downside there as well, missing out on a standard heal that a battleship would have at this tier. Adrenaline Rush is truly excellent. If you're not going to go AA skills, which is probably a good idea in all honesty, maybe go for basic survivability. Taking Grease the Gears is a good idea as well, because the turrets turn so slowly. You could run Brisk as well. They're recommending that. Might work. Decent concealment here, certainly. But I do think Furious and Super Heavy AP probably bait. I don't like taking these skills at all because they tend to make you die sooner. Trying to take advantage of, oh, I got a little better reload, but I got a fire on me. I'll just let it tick because I get better reload. And then suddenly you're on really low HP. Super Heavy AP shells would help out the alpha, certainly. But again, fires can burn you out very, very quickly. So I would rather just focus on trying to get in positions where I'm going to get citadels and allow my ship to be a little tankier, a little bit better concealed, not eat as many fires, to play those positions more often. That's kind of the idea here. Propulsion mod is pretty strong on both the Slava and the Kremlin, if you're wondering. It's very hard to hit the superstructure, especially on a Kremlin, when it's using a prop mod at longer ranges. Of course, we're running aiming systems and reload here. You can run range, and I have done it. It's very fun to be cross-mapping people. You get sniping shots into carriers more often, because again, you don't have the spotter plane, but reload is just too good for most matches. Just to look at the armor real quick, you can see why it kind of dies so quickly at closer ranges. Your upper belt's not bad, but your citadel, while decently protected, it's like 100 mil or 50 to 100 millimeters less armor than the Kremlin does have. So it is easier to citadel as well. So even though it looks like a Kremlin, it certainly does not tank like one. But that is the Slava. I do think it's a good battleship. I think it's very expensive, certainly. The Research Bureau is not a cheap way to be getting ships and takes a long time. So for those of you wondering, Slava or Ohio on the battleship side of things, really comes down to that. Whether you want a more tanking, mid-range, close-range focused battleship like the Ohio that can still do long-range stuff, or do you want a Slava that is very, very focused on long-range and is pretty good at it? And considering the meta these days, that long-range focus is going to be a little bit more valuable as we get to more and more passive games. So there you go. Let me know what you think in the comments down below. Thank you very much for watching, and I hope you have a great rest of your day.